This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, MICHAEL COVEL. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. My guest today is John Jantsch. He's an author, speaker, and a marketing consultant that helps small businesses. You're probably going to recognize his name. You're definitely going to recognize his company name, Duct Tape Marketing. John has been around for 20 plus years, offering fantastic insights. Look, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I always love guys like John that can make me think. He sees the nitty-gritty, he sees the details, and he sees the big picture. His newest work, SEO For Growth, is out now. And I hope you enjoy this conversation today with John Jantsch. So John, as I'm going through your work, one of the things that I love is, as a guy who's been online making money in one way or another since 1996, I'm sure new people can look at your work and go, oh, that's cool. That makes a lot of sense. That sounds practical. That's reasonable. That's logical. That sounds spot on. But when you've lived it and made a decent amount of money online and seen the ups and downs, I read your work and I go, oh, I've always known and I've lived a good part of this, but perhaps I didn't focus on it as much. It's kind of like it's true, but then when you put it in print, you just go, damn, why did I not focus on that even more?
That's absolutely true. I mean, I think I'm coming up on year 29 of my business. One of the things that I've kind of prided myself on, I think the last 10 years or so, we've seen the birth of the online gurus because it got really easy. We've had online gurus for a long time, but it got really easy to become one in the last decade, at least. I tell people I do stuff for my own business, for my own growth, for my own knowledge, and then I write about it. It seems like that experience is what people I think are very attracted to.
Well, you must lose a lot of people, though, when you come out with statements like it's all about the content. Because when you start talking about it being all about the content, that's actually tied to something called work and effort, right? So there's no shortcuts there.
This is probably the greatest source of stress right now for most small businesses is that they are, I think, hearing the message from so many places that it's all about content. And as you alluded to, that's probably the hardest thing to produce from a day-to-day standpoint. The way that I've actually, because one of the challenges is that when people hear it's all about the content, all they think is I need more. And one of the things that I think we've come to realize is that as everybody's gotten this message, it's all about the content, is content has to be the voice of strategy. It can't just be a bunch of stuff that you put up there because everybody said you had to have a blog. It needs to be intentional. It needs to guide the customer journey. And in fact, I've been telling people the last couple of years that you don't need more content. You just need better content. And in fact, you can do less content if you have a plan for that content. It's not going away. The buyer expects it today. And so we just have to figure out how to make it useful for the buyer and the way they want to find the products and services that they acquire.
The first person that I saw that was really doing these very long form, content rich blog posts, and I'm sure there was other people, but Tim Ferriss was really kind of at leading this idea of not content all the time, but some really deep content. Now, how do you contrast that and talk to people that perhaps have seen the response and perhaps seen the results of being on Twitter nonstop, literally just responding to people, but not really producing in-depth strategy or value? It's a real contrast out there because some people see some results in their business, or maybe it's even just a short-term results. They see this, they see the Twitter mindset perhaps working. But I'm with you. I mean, I kind of get annoyed with all the short-term, just respond to everything, and you're supposed to have the essentially the Bible written every day and have something important to say every day, but it just doesn't work that way.
Well, and I think that sometimes what people fail to do is they fail to hook, any kind of analytics and objectives and goals to activity. And so when you see a lot of people busy doing stuff that they hear people, oh, you need to be on this network and that network, and you need to automate your tweets over to here, and you need to do this, and you need to do blog posts every day. I think what happens is that if people really strip away, if they were able to look at all that and say, okay, what's actually making you money? What's actually bringing you customers? They would find that it's probably 8 to 10% of their efforts are actually bringing them, any kind of return on the investment of time. And so one of the things we certainly try to do is instead of saying you need to be doing more stuff, we really want to find, what is your effective channel? I mean, there are 16 places that I routinely talk about that as channels today, ways that we can market, places we can market as business owners. We have to find that one or two that's actually going to pay off, and let's put all of our effort into that. Now we can explore other channels that might help. Like if sales is a great channel for us, we can explore how Facebook or producing content could actually help our sales people or our sales channel. But just this approach of we have to be everywhere with everything is really actually leading to, I think, fragmenting brands more than helping them.
We're going to jump in a few minutes. I want to dig into our main topic area for today, SEO for growth. But I want to get some perspectives from you early on to kind of let the audience understand your depth of understanding in this space of duct tape marketing, such a great original idea that you came up with there. I'd love for you to tell me at some point in this conversation today what struck you to come up with that, because it's just fabulous. But I would love for you to offer some perspective, because this is a medium for me that I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years. I did not expect to have as many listens as I do, and I can't say that I've necessarily got it all figured out. I frankly like doing a podcast. I can't say that. I think the more that I dig in your work, I'm probably going to go, oh man, why am I not doing that? Why am I not doing that? But talk about podcasting from your perspective, big picture right now, how it's being used effectively, perhaps an example that you've seen that might really strike people out there, people that are perhaps not using podcasting, perhaps established podcasters. Maybe give some perspective in how you've seen it evolve, where it's going. Because I saw that you were talking one thing about the SEO and voice, which I think is something I want to bring up today. But give me some perspective on podcasting right now from your view.
Well, so I started podcasting in 2005, and that was sort of the first generation. It was like, okay, we blogged, now podcasting's the next thing. And a few people jumped on it as a great way to produce content. And some people built some followings, but it kind of tapered off. When social media got hot and all of a sudden Twitter and Facebook and the other social networks kind of drowned out this idea of podcasting. Quite frankly, the biggest challenge with podcasting originally was it was there was some technical part in producing it, but actually getting somebody to listen to it was rather difficult. They had to have a special app. We called them podcatchers. It wasn't just readily available that somebody knew how to listen to your podcast or at least subscribe to it. And obviously iTunes changed that dramatically when they started featuring podcasts, but you still had to figure out how to do it. You had to download an app and listen. And then somewhere around, I lose track of the year, 2011, 2012, Apple decided to make the podcasting app come on the iPhone as a default. All of a sudden, you had this immediate built-in audience of people that had access to your shows. And I think that was the turning point of sort of the resurgence of podcasting and people have, it's probably one of the hotter mediums today, at least in terms of buzz. More and more people, are listening to podcasts. More and more people are producing podcasts. But I think there's a couple things, again, is when blogging first came out, everybody talked about being a blogger. The idea behind that was build a large audience, maybe sell advertising around the fact that you had all this traffic and this audience and comments and engagement. But we quickly found out that it was just a great way to produce content to add, to your SEO efforts, to add to your education process, to add to your sales process. And so there was a whole nother use of blogging to where it really became, people talk about it now as just a content management system, a CMS. WordPress is essentially a CMS and not a blog platform. And I think that there certainly are still bloggers, out there that make their living by blogging. But I think it's become a mainstream, content production vehicle. Well, podcasting, I think, is a lot the same way. There are a lot of podcasters that initially started off almost like radio stations or radio programs where they built large followings, potentially around their topic and their guests, and they had subscribers and downloads, and that turned into revenue in many cases, so that became a channel, all by itself, or in some cases, a business all by itself. There are certainly people out there. John Lee Dumas is one that comes to mind that has a podcast business, Entrepreneur on Fire, where his model is to produce as much content on his podcast as possible and get as many downloads as possible and sell that access to advertisers. But to me, the real value of the folks that I work with is that I think podcasting is a tremendous, much like blogging was, a tremendous way to produce content and to get access to people who are important to you to build a relationship with, maybe even prospects. So, for example, my podcast is essentially interviews with authors. I was writing a book at the time I started my podcast. I wanted to have access to other authors who had already made it. And so to me, I looked at it and I said, well, gosh, this is a great way to produce content, but it's also a great way for me to get access to some people that I want to talk to. Because if I sent Seth Godin an email and said, hey, Seth, I'd like to pick your brain for 20 minutes, probably wouldn't hear back from him. But if I sent him a request that said, I would like to interview you about your new book on my podcast, all of a sudden I hear back in several minutes. And so it really allowed me to build a network of relationships with folks that I wanted to meet and have a relationship with, and in some cases, at some point in time, tap their ability to help me. And that's really how it turned out. And so I actually promote to a lot of small businesses, if you have a management consulting firm in your community and you work primarily with mid-size CEOs of mid-size firms, well, start a podcast interviewing CEOs of mid-sized firms and find out what their secrets to success are. That will be amazing content for obviously that your prospects potentially would be interested in, but it's also going to give you access to your ideal client. And in some cases, you might actually be talking to a prospect who says, hey, you know what? I want to learn more about what you do. Whereas that person wouldn't maybe have responded to an email inquiry about, trying to talk about your business. So that's how I probably think about it and have kind of spread this message in ways that most people don't think about podcasting. But it is how I've gotten so many small business owners to get on the podcast train, because I've gotten them to not look at it as a radio station, but to look at it as access. So I know that was a terribly long answer.
No, I'm sitting there listening to everything you're saying, and I'm thinking, my gosh, I've lived so much of this because I'm at 500 plus episodes, and I started as a niche trading podcast. Yeah. And then I interviewed Dan Ariely, the Duke professor on behavioral finance. And then I just kept expanding. I've had paleontologists on, a ton of psychologists, ton of marketing guys, business guys, ladies, men, you name it, everybody. And what I love about what you just said, though, is that it's so true, is that you get this access that you just don't expect. I somewhat brag about it, but I've had 5 Nobel Prize winners in my podcast. And you're right. None of these folks would be saying, hey, Mike, sure, let's have a long conversation. I don't know you at all. Just give me a call, Mike. I'll give you an hour of my time. But you have a podcast where there's quite a few people listening. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And you're just dead on about that. And it's one of those things, I think, that unless you've done the podcast, you don't necessarily understand that particular benefit.
No question. I look at it now, and I've said this many, many times. I would do my podcast even if nobody was listening.
Exactly. 100%.
Really cool people.
100%. Hey, let me pivot you a little bit and to get into SEO, because that's where I really wanted to go today. We could spend hours. We don't have hours, but we could spend hours. But one of the things that I think would be a nice way to kind of open it up, which is a line that I've seen you say many times, Page 1 of Google is your new business card. Oh my gosh. I know this. I know this deep in my bones. I've known this for 15 plus years. I'm the guy that was back in the day who knew that InfoSeek listed their, if you made a change on your website, InfoSeek was updating immediately. InfoSeek is not even around anymore. But the idea of Page 1 results as your new business card, that takes, sometimes if you look at something like SEO and searching and stuff, and you kind of know what things should be, you kind of know what's happening, but you can't reduce it to one sentence that you can grab onto that you know is 100% true. And Google, that first page of results as your business card is so spot on true. If anyone listening right now thinks I'm wrong or you're wrong, they need to go start over.
Well, and I wrote that actually as a title of a blog post, and I was really talking about reputation management. The idea that even if somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, you've got to hire Mike. He is the greatest." Your best friend is telling you Mike is the greatest guy in the world. You should hire him. I mean, we're still, as human nature, it's the behavior that we now expect. We're still going to turn to Google and say, "Well, let's find out about this guy." And what is on Google or what is on page one or not on page one really says a lot, or it's at least the collage that people now have as part of what your brand is. And obviously, if they're Googling just random things, looking for solutions and products and services, and they're finding you and your website on page one, huge trust building factor, because we now as consumers come to expect that what is there and what is given to us by Google must be the best stuff, whether it's true or not. I mean, I think we as searchers out there looking for products and services believe that to be true. What people find or don't find on Google. In fact, there are many cases where somebody will contact me and I'll turn to Google and I will type in some things, and I'm actually leery when I don't find much because they haven't taken the time to expand their platform. They're not contributing in other sites that I trust, and so part of that page one of Google is, grab all of that real estate that you control and that you can say wonderful things about yourself as a bit of a shield to that unfortunate potential time when maybe a disgruntled customer has something else to say.
And I tell this actually to lady friends. I say, listen, if you're going to go on a date and you can't find anything about this man on the internet, maybe you shouldn't go. I mean, what has he been doing with himself that you can't be found at all?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I just actually, we're talking, I just pulled up my name and I'm playing. And look, I'm sure having done this for a long time, I'm probably doing some things right. And I can see that most of the entries that are appearing are things either related to a book or Wikipedia or my blog or Twitter or something.
And that profiles always show up.
Yeah, so that's nice. That's a good way to have it. But, a lot of people, if they're listening to you right now, they're saying, well, that's great, Mike. You've got a head start on me. But, for people to get started, I mean, some of the basics here. I mean, look, having an active Twitter account, having something on Facebook, having LinkedIn, having a CMS like WordPress up. I mean, these are the starting places for people, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And even if somebody says, well, no, none of my clients or prospects go look at LinkedIn. I mean, that's just not used in our industry. Well, those pages always show up on page one, and you control that. I mean, you get to say all kinds of wonderful things about yourself in that real estate. And so why not have as much of that, on page one as possible? And I'll go beyond. Those are the obvious things, but your industry directory, your chamber of commerce, write a blog post for them. These are things that have a high level of trust when it comes to Google, and these are things that will show up on page one, and they don't take a lot of effort for you to really expand not only your real estate but your authority and your expertise. I mean, and I preach this even to salespeople that work at organizations that think, oh gosh, my company goes out and promotes their products and services. I go out and sell them. Well, if somebody is looking at, one product or service or one salesperson or one company, and they're finding, that salesperson that's calling on them seems to also be an expert in our industry because there are publications that are quoting them or that they're contributing to, that's how you get a leg up.
John, give some perspective for those people, and I meet them all the time, smart people that perhaps still They want to be silent. They want to be secret. Perhaps they're not a full-blown entrepreneur, but there's people out there that still they don't want to accept the new reality that everyone has to have a little P.T. Barnum in them. And if you don't have a little P.T. Barnum in you, the other people do, and you're behind. I get it that people don't necessarily want to go out there and put themselves out there as much as you might put yourself out there, but it's really not a choice for success today. I mean, if you're not doing the effort to get yourself into Google, how do people find you?
Well, there's a fairly recent survey of 2,200 B2B buyers. Approaching 80% of them said that they made a decision about the products and services that they were going to buy or services they were going to engage before ever contacting the company. So in other words, what they're doing is they're turning to search engines, they're turning to their social networks, they're turning to places where they can do research on their own before they ever reach out and engage or ask for a sales call. And so if you're not showing up in that, 80% of the time they're doing their research, then you don't exist and you're never going to get the call. You're never going to know that this is a person that is looking for a product or a service or to solve a problem. And I think that's the reality, that we're in today, is that you just, if you're not in the places that people now have put on their path to buying, then you're not going to get the opportunity.
John, let's talk about what happens when you type in, for example, if I just type my name into Google, there is a process behind the scenes that I don't think most people really think about today. And essentially it's one algorithm, two algorithms. This can be many, many algorithms, but behind the scenes, Google is just one big computational math puzzle that is working behind the scenes to generate those results. And those results, sometimes over the years, have been manipulated, and sometimes the things that you'd see on the front page of Google when you search for a term might be engineered to appear there. They might be paid to be put there. There's all kinds of things that have been going on behind the scenes. And I sometimes find myself, it's tough to keep up with everything. And what I've tried to do over the years, and I would love for you to comment on this, I've just tried to keep everything pretty honest, transparent, and not really play games, because I don't understand or know the details of Panda or some of the other names that go on for the various updates that have occurred in Google. Why don't you talk about the algorithmic process of Google and lay out maybe some of that complexity that people should keep in mind? Because even though the magic of the search engine, it looks all great, you get the results, there's a lot going on there. And you can, when you create your content, you can go in good directions and you can go in bad directions. And if you go in a bad direction, you can really hurt yourself.
One of the things that I think a lot of SEO people, particularly in the SEO profession, I mean, that's who names all these updates. That's who whines about these updates. Because one thing that I think you have to be aware of is Google's original objective has never, ever changed. Their original objective has always been that if somebody turns to a search engine, to Google, to their search engine, and types in a search request, that they are going to get the very best, most relevant, most useful results, at least as far as Google can tell, for what their intent is. That has never changed. That was day one, and it is today their only objective. Now, the problem is this is really hard to do. There are billions and billions of pages. There are billions and billions of bits of data that they have to crawl every single day. What has happened over the years is they've just gotten better and better at this. Every time you hear somebody, whine about this change or that change, a lot of times what has happened is Google has made a change that they believe will return better results. That's always been the objective. One of the things that SEO folks have done over the years is to really dig in with a magnifying glass and say, okay, how are they figuring out these results? If we figure out what factors that they are using, from trial and error, we can make some deductions, then we can figure out, how to game the system, or how to at least put it in our favor. So things like going out, at one point, one of the the words on the page were very important, but another very, very important element to the algorithm was other sites linking to your site. For many, many years, Google just figured that the more sites, the better. And so what that led a lot of SEO folks to do was to go out and get any link from any place in any way. And there certainly were people that were, hey, if you've got $5,000, I can get you 5,000 links. And so that game really kind of upset the apple cart when Google said, you know what? We think that actually quality matters more than quantity. And we've now figured out how to assess whether or not those links are coming from relevant sites, whether or not they're organic, whether or not they're paid. We certainly know some neighborhoods, if you will, where links were sold, and countries where this practice was very common. And we're gonna eliminate that, or we're going to tweak the algorithm in a way that again can help us get users the best results, because that's always been the case. So circling all the way back to your original comment, every single time the search engines have updated their algorithm, I get more traffic. And it's because, all I've ever done is tried to say, what would be the most useful, educational, practical content that I can target, my audience that I know they'll want to know about. I'll produce that content on a consistent basis. I'll make sure that Google understands what that content is. I'll optimize it in a way that they know what it is, and then I'll go out there and I'll share it, and I will build relationships with other content producers, and I'll share their content, and so consequently, they'll link back to me in very natural and organic ways, and that. Really, if we want to take a whole course in SEO, I just boiled it down right there. That's I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not that complex.
Well, you're right back to what I said earlier. It's to the hard work part of the equation. And, look, you're laying out the secret right there. If somebody wants to make a dent in the universe and they have an expertise in something, then get good quality. And when I say long form content, I mean, write a paper, write a column, produce a podcast with depth to it. And if you do that, I mean, I'm not going to say this is 100% accurate, but from my little world, it seemed to apply. It gets back to Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come. There is some truth to that. I mean, of course, you can't just trust that alone, but are we reaching a point in time to where if you do produce great content, good content, that build it and they will come is true to some extent, isn't it?
There's no question. I mean, obviously, when I got started, I was producing marketing content on a blog, and there really weren't a lot of people doing that. Today, it's probably more blogs on marketing than any other topic. So I'm not saying that that part hasn't gotten harder. You have to be, I think, much narrower in your focus if you want to get on the radar today. But there's no question that producing useful content, teaching people how to do stuff they want to do, sharing that in places where they find their content, and building relationships with other people that can share that content. I a lot of times when somebody's getting started in a niche, I tell them to, hey, produce some great content, but then go out there and spend as much effort getting place other blogs to let you write for them as much as writing content on your own site, because that's really how you start building the network that's going to multiply over time for you.
Let me get this a little more granular on you. When is the best time to start thinking about SEO? It's before you ever do any content, isn't it?
Well, it's actually before you even build your website, quite frankly, because that's another thing that we take on in the book is that, the whole web design idea is about design. Well, today, websites have to be built with content and with an SEO plan as part of the overall strategy, or you'll build something that it doesn't matter. I mean, you go out and you get this pretty site design, you go fill it up with content, and then you go to an SEO person and say, SEO this stuff for us. Well, a lot of times their hands are tied at that point because the structure of the site, the code of the site is actually going to make it very difficult for that person to be successful. And so we like to, the title of my most recent book, SEO for Growth. We use the word growth because that's a strategic word. It's not SEO for traffic or SEO for clicks. That has to be your search engine optimization approach, because today, we have the tools and the ability to further refine who makes an ideal client for us, what their journey is, what their intent is when they're out there searching. I mean, all of that information really needs to inform exactly the website we build and the structure of that website, as well as then the content that we're going to fill it up with.
I look back, way back in the day when I first got started, and I could see producing, this is before the advent of any CMS really, I was still just in HTML, but you could quickly see what keywords could do. And you could quickly see that in my narrow niche space of trading on quant strategies, I could quickly see, oh, wow. And I never attempted to kind of do anything untoward, but you could see that how important keywords were, and that's never changed, has it?
No, it really hasn't. In fact, that's one of the first steps that when we start working with somebody on their strategy, that's actually, and I'm not just talking about SEO strategy, I'm talking about their business strategy, their marketing strategy. We do keyword research because there's so much information in that research. I mean, as I said, we can actually not only know, what terms somebody is searching in your industry, and that's an important starting point, because a lot of times, we as business owners think, if I do elder law, that's my specialty as an attorney, we think people go out there and search elder law. Well, I guarantee you somebody who is in a probate situation has absolutely no idea what elder law is. They're not searching for that. They're searching for, how do I get out of this mess, right? And so understanding that the actual terms and phrases that people put into search engines is important. Understanding which ones get put in more is important. Understanding the commercial intent of those keywords. In other words, if advertisers are willing to pay $100 for a keyword, there's a pretty good chance it's converting quite well for somebody. So understanding, and having the research and the ability to understand those kinds of things really allow you to focus on, what's our message going to be? I believe that SEO has, a lot of people talk about it being dead, particularly the content marketing people talk about SEO being dead. I think it's actually just been moved, and it's just been elevated to, in my opinion, a higher place.
Let me narrow you to a particular point that I think you could really help people with. I'm sure a lot of people listening, whether it's large or small companies, what are some of the things that people are doing right now that they should not be doing and should stop immediately, because it is literally on the Google do not fly list, the death zone list? What are some things that are people that are doing that you think they should stop literally immediately because it's just hurting them beyond a shadow of a doubt?
Well, one of the things they should stop doing is taking the robocalls from SEO folks that promise to get them on page one without any work, and they happen every day. It's probably the biggest scam right now for small businesses is that SEO firm, and typically, and this is a broad generalization, typically they're coming from parts outside of the United States, and that they're promising to and essentially what they're going to do, and maybe short term, actually, and this is the challenge. In short term, in some cases, they actually might get you some results because they have a whole network of nefarious links that they can drive to your site. Well, in 30 to 60 days, when Google figures out that all your links are coming from Russia and Indian businesses, and they have nothing to do with your business or your industry, you're going to get blacklisted, and maybe you'll just be your results will go way down and you won't really exist, or maybe they'll just flat out not de-index you, which is of course the worst, meaning that someone who even knows the name of your business can't find you, and that's probably been the thing that's hurt people the most. We see it all the time when somebody comes to us and we do an initial audit, and their backlink profile just shows all of these just awful links that we have to spend some time disavowing and cleaning up. So that one's a really obvious one that people need to be aware of. But I tell you, the other thing people have been sold on recently is that they just need to produce a whole bunch of content, a whole bunch of 300-word, fluffy, meaningless, $10 a post, that they can buy out there on a service content, and that's going to cut the mustard. And there certainly was a day when it did, because not everybody was producing high quality content, and I'm not sure that's hurting you, but it's certainly not helping you, and it's a waste of time and energy. And again, I think the question you always have to ask yourself is, if you're making a decision about a link back to your site, if you're making a decision about content on your site, is, will my prospective best client find this useful? And if you can't answer yes to that, then you should be thinking about something else.
As we're talking about content, I think it's worth defining content. To me, when I think of content, at least in my world, is either writing or speaking. So the speaking part I have to do. I can't farm that out. It's me. But I think a lot of times we all think that writing can be farmed out unless one has a significant operations staff, well-trained, the same like-minded people put together in a group. Writing, I don't know how one is supposed to farm this out, because all of these 20 and 30 something folks out there that say, I can write for you. I mean, as you just said, it's just fluff. It's nonsense. It's like It's just dirt building up and dust building up around the internet that's completely pointless, completely useless. And I have a feeling what you've been hinting at in this conversation is Google is finally getting to the point where that kind of stuff is really being penalized.
It is. Again, I don't know that they're necessarily slapping somebody and saying we're going to delist you because your content is weak. They're just in the math of figuring out who to rank above another. You're certainly not going to score very well. So you might as well be delisted. If you're not on page 1 or 2 for some of the search results that you're after, then you might as well not exist. But the other thing is, so I'm going to go back and kind of take on this whole thing of defining content, because it really, that is one of the challenges. A lot of times people think, well, that's blog posts. Content really is in many, many forms. You talked about speaking, but you can certainly do that in video that can be recorded. The podcasts that we talked about, ebooks, checklists are content. I mean, pretty much anything that teaches somebody how to do something they want to do, or inspires them to do something they want to do, I think can be talked about as content. I think one of the things that we have to understand as businesses and marketers is that we also have to think about the journey and the intention of that content, because we need different forms of content. When somebody doesn't know anything about us, or they don't even know what their problem is, they just know that, hey, I'm a small business owner and I want to, how come I don't have enough sales, right? That's a very common, problem, but that doesn't necessarily mean I want to hire a marketing consultant, or I want to hire a web designer, or I want to hire whatever it is that you do. We have to be producing content to kind of get on people's radar, to let them know we understand your business, we understand your challenges, we understand your pain. Oh, and by the way, we have some great information for that. Oh, and by the way, look what we did for other people who had that same problem. Oh, and by the way, here's how it might work for you. We have to think about moving people, through these stages with our content, and not simply just producing content for the search engines. We use something called the marketing hourglass. And the idea behind it is that kind of borrows from the funnel analogy that a lot of marketers are familiar with, but really expands on it. And there are 7 stages of our hourglass: know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. In a perfect world, we are producing content, we're producing campaigns, we're producing processes, maybe even products that help move people or guide, I should say, people along, those behaviors or along that path. And in many cases, content is the real driver. So it's a blog post that we advertise on Facebook might be because it addresses something we know people really are struggling with, or we know our target market are really struggling with. So that gets us on their radar. That gets them to think, who is this person? I want to go check this out. Well, maybe I want to download this checklist that they offer to help me solve my problem. So I'm going to give them my email address. And now they're going to invite me to a webinar. And now they're going to share an ebook with me. And so, that's really the holistic way that we have to think about content. And even going farther, now that they became a client, how do we orient them? How do we use content to teach them how to get more, or to buy more, or teach them how to refer us? So content's really this thread that runs through all of the things that we want our clients to do. And it's not just simply hey, how do we get a search engine to notice us?
Let me take content in a slightly different direction, see if you agree with me. I like something that you say very directly in your work. I've learned it myself. I've been doing it for nearly 20 years online, or at least I try to do it as fast as I can, which is respond quickly. I mean, if I get an email from a customer, a client, or it could be somebody that wants me to speak, it could be anything. Responding quickly has a psychological reaction in the receiver that is insanely productive off the chart. I don't have the exact rationale as to why it works so well, but responding quickly is just one of the best secrets ever. And in terms of content, when you respond quickly, or even if it's a little slow, what you say in that response is content too.
Yeah, no question. Every email you write, right, is content. But, I'm going to give you a hint at why I think that works so insanely well. And I think it's because people's expectations are pretty low. these days. And I think that they have spent so many times of not having people respond quickly or at all. And so if you are that person that does it, that can actually be your huge point of differentiation. In fact, I had a law firm a number of years ago that we did work for, and one of the things we always like to do is interview their clients to just get a sense from them. It's, why do you like these guys? Because they tell us they're great for all their reasons, but you buy from them, you give them money. Why do you stay with them? And we heard over and over again from this firm's clients that, well, you know what, they call us back right away. And the law firm was like, well, that's going to be our big promise. And I said, that's what they're not getting from other people. And to me, I've always felt that was, one of the things. Anytime you can exceed people's expectations, you're going to have a great point of differentiation.
You bring up the law firm, and when we all hire an attorney, we expect to have a conversation with that attorney, and that's how it works generally. You talk to that attorney, and that's the relationship, and it's not his staff, it's not an underling, it's not an assistant. And I'm sure you found this too. And we all, perhaps as a business grows, you want to, look, Tim Cook at Apple can't answer everybody's email, but if somebody gets a response from you, John, that also triggers something entirely different than just perhaps John's assistant.
It does. And you're right. It is one of the challenges, particularly for smaller businesses, because, obviously, if you're going to scale, the only way to scale is to delegate and outsource and get other people to do some of the things that are maybe not as high payoff as, say, strategizing or, writing great content or creating products or innovations in some ways. I think we have to walk that fine line between the processes we create so that people do have access to us, people do have an experience with the brand that they expect, but it is something that's hard over time because when I first started my business, I was happy when somebody sent me an email, and I get 2,000 a day now. And so I'm not quite as happy about it as I was once. But
you're thinking right now, thanks, Mike. I really don't want to respond to 2,000 emails today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but it pulls at me because, I do this because I love working with small business owners. So when somebody writes to me and says, can you help me understand how to do something better? It does tug at me. I want to help them.
You've got a little list here that I wrote down that I like, and you talk about new rules applying today. Keep your promises, be transparent, respond publicly, address criticism, learn from your mistakes. Now, that third one, respond publicly, that's a way for a guy like you to, if you're engaging publicly with a personal response, then you are kind of leveraging yourself in a big way, aren't you?
Yeah, I think that, and again, that's not going to be, you're not going to send every email up, publicly, but
could be a tweet. Could be a tweet.
A tweet could be a review on Yelp. That's what I was really talking about in that particular list, is that you do have the ability. One of the things I think people underestimate is how, I don't know if it's lurking is the right term, but how much people watch, what we're doing. Even though we think we're having that one conversation with that person on Twitter, it is an opportunity to demonstrate what you believe in, demonstrate that you keep your promises, demonstrate that you want that customer to be happy or that you want them to get whatever challenge they're having solved. And so I think people sometimes underestimate that's a bit of a performance as well as a customer service routine.
I think lurking is the right word, and I have to catch myself sometimes because usually when you're in a public forum, the real easy responders are always there to kind of back you when you say something controversial. But the lurkers, you always have to be worried about the lurkers because those are the ones that might be, oh my gosh, I'm not going to pay attention to him anymore. He just went off the deep end.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, talk about one more issue out of that list of new rules, and then I have one final kind of SEO thought that I want to bring up. Addressing criticism. Now that is it's a tricky one, and it kind of ties in with transparency. But being able to walk out there and fall on your sword and say, I did this wrong, or I responded wrong, or our company messed up, this is huge. This causes the lurkers to go, okay, you know what? I trust that guy more.
Well, I think that, I've said this before, and skeptics will go, that's crazy. I think people want us to succeed. I really do. And I think that they actually are pained when we make a mistake or when somebody calls us out. And the only way that we can lose them is to, respond in a dispassionate way or not at all. And I think that when you use an example of, hey, we made a mistake, we're going to fix it. I mean, I think that, and for a lot of people, now some people don't, but for a lot of people, that's okay. Case closed. That's all we wanted you to say. That's all we wanted you to do is admit that you're human, because so am I. I think it's also an opportunity for you to get better. And so, we sometimes have people that will write, and they're not necessarily criticizing us or the experience. They're just saying, hey, I thought it was going to come this way, or I was really surprised I didn't get, a response to, this inquiry. And so a lot of times we'll look at that and go, yeah, that's dumb. Why aren't we doing that there? It's a great way, rather than just going, oh, these people, they just complain about everything. I mean, it's a great way for you to actually learn how to do something better. And I think if you invite, I don't want to say invite criticism, but invite feedback at pretty much every stage of your business, it's just going to make you better if you'll listen to it.
One last thing, John. This is a real curiosity thing for me, and I saw it in your work. Voice search. So I have to raise my hand and say that I have not officially used voice search other than messing around with Siri on my iPhone for a few seconds and saying, okay, I'm not yet ready for this. But I have a sneaky suspicion, seeing this Amazon product, and I think Google's got a standalone product you put in the room. Talk about voice search right now. What should people know? Where can they go for more information? Lay out the case right now, because this is as cutting edge as it is right now for us people that are on the internet working with clients.
You named a few of them, though. So the Alexa tool from Amazon, Google Home. I suspect you're going to see more and more of this type of device. Siri is on the iPhone. There's actually the desktop version of Siri now, so you can sit at your laptop and do voice search now. And the idea behind it is that for anybody who's not familiar with it, that you just say, find me a plumbing company. and Google Home or Alexa goes, I found one by you, because they know where you are. And they give you a listing, perhaps. Or you ask it, what is the best way to do X, Y, Z? And if it's not something too obscure, they're going to read back to you a result. The thing that I think is significant about this, and I don't propose to have an answer because we're all learning right now about this, but the thing that's significant is it doesn't say, here are my best 10 answers. It says, here's my one answer. And that doesn't mean it wouldn't also then, like Siri will pull up a page of search results or something, so you might have some other things. But for the most part, what I have been advising some people to do is pick out 2 or 3 questions that are just always asked in your industry, or at least maybe some that are a little more obscure, because, if you're in marketing, how to do X, Y, Z in marketing, might be a little hard for you to win, because there's a lot of people out there that, are much bigger domain authority than you. But pick out a handful of questions, because that's typically what people are asking these, is how to do something, where to find something. They're typically phrased as questions. So pick out a couple of those and really go to work on optimizing some of those and I'll tell you where to look. Is look up the term Google Knowledge Box. And you've probably seen this if you've done some searches where you'll see Google doesn't even want you to leave. They're giving you the answer. Have you seen those kind of searches? You search for something, a question, and they give you at the very top listing will be, like, let's say you say, how to delete email on my iPhone, some sort of search like that. There's going to be a knowledge box that's probably going to show up and say, here are the 5 steps to do that. And you don't have to, Google doesn't want you to leave ever, because they want you to accidentally or on purpose click on an ad, because that's how they make money. And so that knowledge box is a bit of a hint of some searches that are going to show up for voice search. A lot of SEO folks are trying to go out and find ways for their clients or their websites to rank for a handful of these knowledge box searches, because that's what's going to start showing up in voice search. Again, we could do a whole show on this, and it gets fairly technical and it's an evolving thing. But do that. That's where I tell people right now, go read about the knowledge box, because that's probably the starting point of your education for understanding kind of these first result type of things.
Let me give the bad news and the good news to people, and this is a line from your work. SEO is the key to how many successful companies sell, grow, and dominate online. But it has changed, and it will keep changing, which means there is no rest for the wicked. It will never stop. And so if you don't want all the stress and whatnot that goes with this kind of being an entrepreneur and using on the online space, I don't know, just get a desk job and stop, because this is a game that never quits, huh?
Yeah, there's no question. So, that's where we get to put the plug in to, hire a professional. Don't do this yourself. No.
Okay, so, hey, John.
I actually tell people, buy SEO for Growth. Even if you don't want to have anything to do with SEO, it will make you a much better buyer of the services, because that's one of the real challenges. Is you probably shouldn't be optimizing your web pages, but you better hire somebody who's doing it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is like spotting the silliness and avoiding the silliness.
Exactly.
Yeah. SEO for Growth, your newest book, John. I do not know off the top of my head how many books you have. I know it's more than one.
Yeah, it happens to be my fifth book.
Fifth. Okay. So,
yeah.
Number 5, the main website, Duct Tape Marketing. There's an SEO for Growth website. Any other place we should send people?
No, that as you said, Duct Tape Marketing is really where I house everything. But we did create a site just for the book itself, as I have done for all my books. So it's just SEOforgrowth.com, and there's some free resources there. So worth a trip.
John, thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, my pleasure. This is always fun.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.